He altered the state flag of Minnesota to resemble the Somali flag. Have you ever seen that? However, there are issues with our existing flag. We've become a more varied state, as I believe we all know. And it's more telling, in my opinion, that Joe Rogan discovered something about Tim Walz that is so bizarre that it makes UFO sightings seem entirely regular. Walz abruptly ceases to be a politician and becomes a walking plot twist. Rogan has enough material to roast him to a crisp like Texas BBQ elk meat. Politics isn't involved. Inadvertently, a reality TV show was shot in Minnesota. What Joe discovers is a concoction of turmoil, comedy, and conspiracy excitement. You'll want popcorn for this complete meltdown, I promise. There are some problems with Walz's accounts of his military career, therefore consider them. Yes, something people possess. I'm not sure if he ever explicitly stated that he served in Afghanistan, but when people said he didn't correct him, he didn't stop them from claiming that he did he? There were some things he didn't. And please remember to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this. It's much more helpful than you may imagine. In his life, Joe Rogan has witnessed some strange things. Health gurus claiming kale smoothies will fix everything from the flu to broken marriages. UFOs and politicians feigning to know what elk meat tastes like. Tim Walz, a politician who somehow makes Minnesota seem like the set of a low-budget sitcom gone haywire. However, even Joe wasn't prepared for. If that man came to power, is that Tim Walzer? As if Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, had become our president after Kamala's death. Do you realize how insane this nation would be? What about our happiness when that strange person places tampons in the boys' room? As if he were a total pathological liar, like an outright lie, pretended to be in Tiananmen Square, falsely claimed to be a football team's head coach. Rogan discovered that there was no genius at work when he peeled back the curtain. It was a man balancing anarchy like a state fair clown. Somehow, Tim Walz has perfected the skill of appearing busy, while accomplishing very little. It's essentially running on a treadmill with a political twist. No progress, all sweat. In its own absurd way, the appearance of motion without really moving forward is nearly amazing. I'm not sure. Tim Walsh is once again speaking in public. He could fight any Trump supporter, you say? Yes. He claimed that because he could fix a truck, they are afraid of him after he kicked their ass, as if his masculinity were a threat to them. I am capable of fixing a truck. The woman protested too much, so he said something like, "Do you? I bet you don't. You probably don't. I'm afraid. If I bring you a broken vehicle and a bag of tools, I'll bet." Well, that was sort of the remedy then. That was the effort. Rogan couldn't help but observe that whenever Walz attempts to demonstrate his leadership, it feels less like authority and more like a substitute teacher. It felt as if we were heading to the emblem of masculinity on the left. 5 minutes in, the class is becoming unruly. A strong leader was what Minnesota desired. Rather, they found a bewildered father attempting to program the TV remote control. The laugh track speaks for itself, and its leadership became a family sitcom. Tim Walsh is shown performing the exact same thing in this video. You're doing the same thing? The same thing. Additionally, he stated, of course it's a salute. They tried to argue that President Musk saluted, and we debated it for 3 days. He did, of course. However, that is a diversion. Things have become so out of control. The crazy thing is that Walt isn't even attempting to conceal it. The man behaves as though he has discovered the key to managing a government. However, Joe found that his alleged major ideas sounded like they were taken directly from a motivational calendar published in 2003. Only when you are half asleep in a dentist's waiting room does it sound deep. With that trademark, are we seriously doing this? Tone he typically saves for interviews and people presenting flat earth claims. Rogan revealed the humor of it all without resorting to nastiness. There's no such thing as pardon me. You are aware that I did not travel to Iraq. That's right. You know, while my unit was deploying, I retired. I see that you retired a few months prior. A few months prior. Indeed. However, those guys are aware that they are leaving, aren't they? Well, it's not like they get a paper all of a sudden one day. They are aware that there is a build-up to that. As a result, even his staff was saying, look, we all knew we were going. He knew he was going. All right. Even more amusing is the fact that, despite the fact that half of the nation couldn't even identify Walz in a lineup, he still acts like the unsung hero of American politics. He is, however, behaving as though he is trying out for a role as president in a high school play. Since there is no intellect beneath Walz's layers, Joe was unable to overlook the ridiculousness. Just a person with a crayon-drawn playbook, desperately attempting to blend in with the pros. Digging beneath the surface is the essence of Rogan's entire situation. When it came to Walz, he discovered that the only thing keeping the pandemonium together was the surface. You get the smiling politician act on the outside. But as Joe began to make connections, it became less of a trusted leader, and more of a guy who definitely shouldn't be left alone with sharp instruments. Like peeling an onion only to discover it's actually a spray-painted cabbage, every story had an absurd twist. Calling out how Walz talks about leadership like he's delivering a TED presentation, but the outcomes look more like a kindergarten art project, was one of Joe's favorite moments. Confusion-filled, messy, and proudly portrayed as though it's innovative, is entirely correct about Tim Walz. When the Fox News crowd is yelling at me, I know I'm doing something good. Like I'm in love with it. That man was on the verge of becoming the US vice president. Last week, Elon Musk was in tears. Tim is treating me cruelly. For example, yay. Obama may or may not have cognitive decline issues at his age, but at her age, she is simply stupid. You've probably heard the clip where he says, "I need a vice president that's dumber than me. I need a vice, Biden." Imagine someone utilizing a flip phone to deliver a lengthy speech about innovation. We're dealing with irony at just that level. Walz enjoys taking a tall stance, as if he were recreating history. However, Joe revealed that the man spends half of his time simply revising his shopping list. The way Walz presents himself as though Minnesota is at the front of a political revolution when, in reality, it's a testing ground for dad jokes and embarrassingly uncomfortable town halls, is what truly made Rogan laugh. Walz believes he is in charge of Rome, but Joe notices a lemonade stand with dubious math. Those around him either pretend to believe it or fall for it, because it's entertaining to see someone unintentionally stumble their way to power, as if it were a game of political chess. Rogan was unable to ignore Walz's remarkable talent for transforming every serious situation into a comedic joke. It feels like a blooper reel when you give him an opportunity to look presidential. He will return a national issue to you like a poorly wrapped present. No bow, torn paper, and no instructions. Politics in Minnesota isn't even government anymore, Joe said. After its first season, the reality show was not renewed. What's crazy is how Walz continues to glide through it all, recovering from each mishap like an unrelenting cartoon figure. Have you watched this video? I haven't. Play it, please. Most likely it's a real person. Perhaps it's not Tim Walz. Trump was created by AI. I mean, that's funny when he slaps his. Yes, it is unquestionably him. All of this is entirely true. You're a government plant, Jamie. Jamie's compromised top claims that it was created by AI. Riley Moore was duped by a Minnesota AI-generated video. I also fell for it. And why did I fall for it, do you know? For the simple reason that I think he can. It's nearly amazing. It's similar to seeing someone trip over ice, but manage to stay upright. It's impossible to determine if it's skill or pure luck. Like Neo in The Matrix, Walz avoids responsibility. But instead of bullets, he's being hit by poor choices. Here's where Rogan had a great time. The notion that Walz is some misunderstood genius was shattered by him. Not at all. Joe likened him as an overconfident gym coach substitute. He can provide a powerful motivational speech about teamwork, but you'd be better off asking middle schoolers with a whiteboard to execute actual plays. Walz continues to behave as though he is playing chess, but Joe reveals that it is really Candyland, and he continues to lose. It seems stranger the further Rogan went. Walz has a tendency to over-explain everything, as though talking more will somehow make meaningless things seem more intelligent. Joe, however, was not duped. He was able to see through it. Walz's remarks are essentially those inspirational cat posters on audio. The ones that show a kitten hanging from a limb with the phrase "hang in there." They seem encouraging until you discover that the cat is simply stranded for a longer period of time. They were discussing ways to combat hate speech on the internet, after all, such as the idea that hate speech is not free speech. In fact, it was what the Tim Walz guy was saying. We should push back on this, in my opinion. Free speech is not guaranteed when it comes to hate speech or disinformation, particularly in our democracy. Hate speech. Here's the real kicker, though. Walt managed to persuade people that he is relatable. Rogan pointed it out. It sounds like the guy's concept of being grounded was penned by a marketing intern while sipping coffee. It isn't genuine. It's comic improv with a 2-drink limit. Joe revealed that he's more like an AI computer, designed to say people every 3 phrases than Walz, who goes around trying to portray the everyman. And Walz surpasses himself just when you think he's at his most awkward. Walz doesn't just stumble, Joe said. As if it were part of the plan, he stumbles enthusiastically. When he triumphantly announces a major endeavor, it will fall apart faster than a lawn chair from the dollar shop. As if history might one day celebrate his epic gaffes, the man hoards political disasters like trophies. It won't. Spoiler alert. Joe, however, did more than merely criticize Walz's political views. He pursued the whole feeling. Picture Walz entering a room. Immediately, the mood shifts. Not out of deference, but because everyone is anticipating the inadvertent comedy act he's going to put on. It was like watching someone try karaoke for the first time, Rogan said. Loud, self-assured, and totally out of tune. You can't help but chuckle even when you don't want to. No, the footage shows him removing the Minnesota flag and replacing it with a new one that resembles the Somali flag. There are a lot of Somali people living in Minnesota. Okay, are you ready? Whoa, hold on a second. He then retrieves the flag, takes it up, and puts it back. Better. It's better that way. What makes that superior? The irony truly hits home here. In fact, Walz thinks he's doing it perfectly. That is the secret. Walz sees a highlight reel, but everyone else sees a blooper reel. Joe revealed that the man's capacity to exist in a parallel universe, where every error is a success, may be his greatest talent. That fantasy became a superpower. And for some reason, it lasts long enough for him to maintain a straight face while filming. Joe didn't stop there either. Like a surfer who has never learned to balance, he delved into Walz's fixation with following trends. Rogan chuckled at Walz's belief that uttering the correct words is equivalent to carrying out the task. Walz would be the one stuttering unfamiliar lyrics, in the hopes that the audience won't notice him if politics were karaoke. The most amusing aspect is how Walz responds to criticism. Rogan said that he views every negative headline as a personal jab from the cosmos. Rather than gaining knowledge, he doubles down with the assurance of someone who has just misread a map, but is adamant that the car is traveling in the correct direction. As Joe aptly put it, observing how Walz cope with hardship is akin to witnessing a man attempt to repair a damaged sink using duct tape. You have to respect the effort even though it doesn't succeed. Men have tampons, so I can go right to saying, I need a vice president double the maintenance. Walz. We've accomplished a great deal. We haven't given it enough credit. To be honest, we need to do a better job of communicating what we have done, and who has done it. We must end this cycle, so you must lose. The timing couldn't be more ideal, and we're getting way. Just when people are pleading for authenticity, Joe takes down Walz. Here is Walz providing the exact opposite. Aim for appeal while adding a lot of awkwardness. It was demonstrated by Rogan's breakdown that Walz is more than just out of touch. He is essentially in orbit around a completely different planet. It's not bad. It's hilarious. Of actuality, the man is the comedic relief that everyone can't stop watching. But he genuinely believes he is the lead of an engrossing political play. You can't help but notice the picture of Walz that Rogan painted at the conclusion. A politician who unintentionally became famous, believed he was meant to be great, and has been improvising ever since. People couldn't stop laughing because of this. Joe did more than simply call him out. He exposed Tim Walz's political career as an inadvertent comic act. Walz became less of a leader, and more of a walking blooper reel, because of his excessive confidence, dad joke policies, and ludicrous speeches. Minnesota desired a governor, however they ended up with a sitcom star. Additionally, Joe Rogan made it possible for the rest of us to attend the concert in the front row. Joe's collapse grew more obvious the more times it was played back. This was not an isolated error. The pattern was full-on, total psychopathic dishonesty. Let's face it, outsiders are infiltrating towns, stealing, displacing local workers, and generally making life more difficult for residents. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are their names. A total fabrication, lied about being the head coach of a football team and about being in Tiananmen Square. Because this began, and as a young prosecutor, I adore this tale. Claude Harris described his first experience in the courtroom. Pathological liars. People who lie on a regular basis. They simply lie about everything all the time. You didn't deploy for war, 1C. You didn't. Why do you claim to have been deployed to a conflict zone? The weapons you employed throughout combat. No. You participated in the fight. November is when I intend to wake up. It's not bad luck for Walz. He is reliable. Every gesture, remark, and earnest attempt to appear presidential somehow ends up looking blooper reel. It's nearly commendable. As if he's spending his whole professional life demonstrating that Minnesota politicians are more affected by gravity than anyone else. You would think that he would eventually learn, but he doesn't. He simply doubles down and enters the same glass door twice with pride. Observing a magician who only knows one trick, and that one fails half the time, is like that. Minnesota continues to clap courteously, but it's clear that they're considering switching from the warm-up performance to the main act. The true punchline is that Walz continues to believe that he is killing it. Unaware that everyone else is seeing a comedy genuine, he struts around giving Oscar-worthy monologues. Joe Rogan didn't have to unearth hidden controversies or secret data. He just needed to hold up a mirror. Instead of corruption or villainy, something much funny echoed back. Tim Walz, the accidental political comedian, is the star of an endless sitcom that no one requested but that everyone finds impossible to stop watching.